Good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of Thinking Thursday. Tonight's topic is the unexpected effects of the pandemic on education. It truly has impacted our children's mental health, our teachers' mental health, our parents' mental health. So we're definitely looking at just the unexpected effects that this pandemic has had on education. And actually, we have some hopeful things that we should get to the end, where there are even some positive things. But as always, we're going to start out with a little breathing, and then I'll introduce my guest to you. So, for those of you, if it's the first time, let me let you know we always begin with deep breathing. Deep cleansing breathing allows us to have a wusa moment to calm down, to get rid of some of the cares of the day, and to allow ourselves to relax and feel a little better and clear our head. So we'll breathe in to the count of four and breathe out to the count of four. And I'll be counting slowly. So I want you to breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. I'll do three cleansing breaths with you. So let's start. Breathe in, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. In, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. One final in, two, three, four, out, two, three, four. Hopefully, you've had a minute to just woosah and take a breath and get ready as we start our topic tonight. As I said, our topic tonight is the unexpected impact of the pandemic on education. And we're joined by our resident educators for this year, Nikki Williams and Kenetra Cooper. They've been with us before, one secondary, one elementary, so we can get a perspective from the different ends because there are many impacts, and we're just going to hear. So, ladies, unmute yourself and let's get ready to talk. So, Kenetra, we'll start on the young end and we'll move up to the older kids. What are some things that you'd like to share with us? Some impacts that you've seen um, on our children, not just so much on education, but what is it with our children? Some things that you see that are impacted because of the pandemic.
Good evening. My name is Kenetra Cooper. I am a sixth grade science and social studies teacher in the elementary realm, as Ms. Lucas has said. So, one of the things that I noticed, so we know that there's those common things that we know that kids go through, but one of the things that I've noticed in the elementary level and that we might not have ever considered or thought about is depression in young kids. Um, and that's something that you may not have realized that kids deal with at this age. Um, there was a situation where at one time one of my colleagues was on a call with one of our students, and we kind of try and talk to the students because we know that some of them are home alone or some of them are not really having a lot of interaction. And the young man said, "It's just me and my dad's gun here." And as an educator, and hearing that, you go into panic mode. Um, the way that we had to immediately respond to that, because for one, what would push a kid to share that piece of information? Of all the other things that could be in the house, why would you put yourself with your father's gun? And so, of course, we went into crisis mode. So we handled it. We handled it just like we would have if we came across an abuse case or a neglect case or something like that. Contacting personnel, getting someone to the house immediately, and then we that kind of
And
opened our
say again,
eyes.
you're breaking up.
Am I breaking up?
You're back. It may have been on my end. Go
Okay.
on.
Okay. So that really just opened our eyes up to think about, you can see depression in, like, you think middle school kids, high school kids, even adults, but you never think that maybe some of these little kids are becoming depressed because they don't have that social interaction. They don't have that physical contact with other kids their age. If they're an only child, they're not having that. Maybe the only interaction they were getting is when they actually came into the school building, and now that's been taken away. And so, not really knowing how to respond to that from an emotional perspective, it starts to kind of set in that, I'm just looking around and it's just me and these walls, and I don't know how to deal with this. So that's one of
And
the things.
that's a
Mhm.
and one of the things we don't think of is that younger children do get depressed. And this has ripped the veil off of that. As an elementary counselor, I have had to, in the past, when that was my job, I did have to deal with elementary students that wanted to attempt suicide. And we don't think about it. So this is one of those unexpected effects that we're seeing more what's really going on in children's lives. And it is true. And you're right. So those kids, if I was an only child, and I have clients now in my practice, I'm the only child and my parents are not letting me go to school, so I'm home all day. And I hate it because I never see anybody my size. And that's a real issue. I mean, when this is probably about a sixth grade, and I just want to see some kids. I don't want to see them on Zoom. I want to be in the room with them. So there is that. So yes, there's that depression is real. And Nikki, would you say you see that or in any interaction with your kids in high school who are either virtual or in school? Would you see depression has increased or is there right now?
Hi, yes, my name is Nikki Williams, and I'm a high school counselor. And I do see depression. We had kids who were depressed um, prior to COVID, but now it has increased. And so, can you imagine that this is your senior year and you've not seen any of your classmates and you're getting ready to graduate? Can you imagine that it's your senior year and you may not have a prom? You may not have a senior skip day. You may not have a lot of things that you were used to. So that's one component. And then the other is the social aspect of being at home alone. And like the younger kids, they may be at home, but they also may be the caretakers of the younger kids while parents are home. And so now they have this increased responsibility of trying to make sure that they're in their classes, but they're also trying to make sure that their siblings are in their classes as well. And there's the depression of the finances. There's depression of well, one example is we have a student who's depressed because she doesn't like how she looks on Zoom, and so just how her image, and so she's asked to not have to show her face on Zoom, and so the school is saying, well, if you were in a classroom, everybody would see your face, but it is different when you're on Zoom, and so dealing with that aspect, and so she finally went to a therapist and was able to get a note and was able to receive 504 accommodations for that. And so you have depression for various reasons. You have students who are deaf or hard of hearing, and now they have to be on Zoom and they're not able to see. Or if you have students who have visual impairments and Zoom is making them not feel well, all of those type of things are causing individuals to be depressed, and they are also causing anxiety. Just imagine what you're going through as an adult and then intensify it as a kid, because they don't have the ways to self-medicate or the finances to do the things that they could help them to escape.
So true, and that is real. That depression across the spectrum. What about though, and what about from the personnel standpoint, teachers, staff? Are you seeing any depression? Let's stick with that one for a moment. Do you think what impact? Because I know it has impact. So tell me about your staff, your coworkers. You don't have to tell about yourself. Just what's going on with coworkers?
Well, I can say I'm one of those optimistic people. And so I'll start with myself. I try and take the best out of it. So I have found my joy and found my smile in whatever God blesses me with. I'm going to be well and okay.
Mhm.
However, there are several of my colleagues, they were so upset, so furious. I don't want to be in this house with my own kids all day. And I want to go back and I want to see adult people. And it was a real thing. Sometimes it was shared in more of a comical type of sarcastic way, but then you could tell deep down inside that a lot of them, you could see it in their faces. They liked coming into the building. And I do, I liked walking into the building and seeing my colleagues. And I go into the office every morning just to knock on the plexiglass now and just tease them and say good morning, or try to turn a cartwheel or anything just to bring that smile. And so, yes, when you're on a Zoom, I really didn't get to see any of my office personnel because they're not on my Zooms. I may have seen my immediate teammates because we have a team meeting, but I didn't get to see the counselor. I didn't get to see the office personnel. I may see my AP, my assistant principal, and my principal when we had a staff meeting. But other than that, I didn't get to see the fifth grade teacher that I used to always stop by and check on and say, how are you doing? And so I can say that that did hurt my heart. So then I had to become creative and I had to get their phone numbers. And it's like, okay, I have to call you now because I can't stop by your classroom and wave. And so that definitely can impact us as an adult because we too yearn for that social interaction as long as we're not an introvert. I'm definitely an extroverted. So I did, but like I said, I found other ways. I started calling them or sending them a text message, or we need to get on a Zoom call, just me and you, so we could just talk about life since we can't stop in the hallway and share a few words. So definitely that depression and that feeling to want to be back on campus and wanting to be around all the people. Also, it bothered adults. It's like, I don't even want to teach anymore. Like, it's not the same.
Mhm. And I've heard that from personnel that it's not. And you mentioned office personnel. We often don't think about them, but they, if you were the receptionist or the front desk person, and you're a social person, and you're back now because the school is open, but you don't interact with people the same way. Teachers aren't just coming to the office to hang out. Parents can't come in, so you don't interact with them. So for the extrovert, even though you're back at work, it's but it's like the kids, it's not the same. And we think about it with children, but for adults as well, it's not the same. And for some people, that is depressing because the expectation was when I go back, things will be normal, and they're not. Nikki, what are you seeing on the high school level with your peers,
On the high school level,
the staff rep?
okay, with the staff, one of the things that I saw was a lot of anger and a
Mm,
lot of helplessness. They were helpless because we had to be at work. They were helpless because they couldn't determine how many kids were going to be in, and what was the PPE going to look like. And eventually we had PPE and we had shields placed up. So then they were okay. But initially they were like, what does it look like coming back in person? And then depressed because they felt like there was not enough transparency about COVID tracking. And our school was just recently closed for 2 weeks because of it. And so there was that depression uh, along with, okay, we're back, but now we're not back. And then we got to go back. And, you have to pack all your stuff up, and so there was that component. And then there was the component of, how do you expect me to teach in live and digitally? How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to handle it? And then one of the things that we ended up doing is that our kids, so the kids who did come to school, they were no longer allowed to rotate from classroom to classroom. And so we ended up with, like, out of 1,200 kids, we ended up with 39 kids on campus because they would stay in one room all day looking at their Zoom for all the other teachers. And so they were like, we could stay at home for that. And so that was very depressing because they were just disenfranchised. Like what's the point? What is the point? And so then there's the depression of how do I motivate kids who don't want to be motivated? How can I get a kid to do work and they don't want to, but you're still holding me accountable? We're still having the STAR test in person and you still want me to do all these things, but I'm actually doing two jobs. I'm doing Zoom and I'm doing in class. So how do I do that? And I'm still effective. And you mean that you're going to give me a T test? I'm doing the T test. You're evaluating me. Okay. And so that was very depressing for me as a counselor. My sadness comes from that kids who were successful are no longer successful. I'm talking about my straight A students, my GT students, my honor students, my dual credit students have failed and failed 8 classes, and now I got to get them to graduate. And it's like, how can I drag you? I mean, it's very depressing. And so then when we start talking about the kids who weren't even doing successful to begin with, and missing kids who we've not located. And so we've had to create a task force. We had 178 kids that we got to send a task force. And so my fear is, I hope they're okay. I hope nothing bad has happened to them. And so as a counselor, there's a lot weighing on me as well. But like you say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I'm going to be all right. And I think of this too shall pass. And I just have my affirmations that, Ms. Brown used to have affirmations every week. And that I just use my affirmations. I'm a firm believer in affirmations to get me through this process.
And that is very helpful. I'm glad you still use them. Before we leave the idea of depression, I want to just the mental health aspect, anxiety. I see, I actually stopped seeing young children in my practice because I'm all virtual. And I just don't think it's a good platform for me, working with children. But I've worked and I still have some young clients and lots of, I'll see teenagers. And I'm seeing a lot of anxiety as well as the depression. Anxiety and worry, and like you mentioned with the seniors. My son's a senior, and the other day we passed by his school. We were going to, and he said, "Mom, I won't even be able to walk across the stage." And it was just this thought of, because we don't know. I said, well, we don't know because they're not gonna have it. It's not gonna be real. I was like, yeah, it's like, don't try to make me feel good. But you don't think about, just thoughts like that, you go to school for kindergarten for 13 years and the ultimate end of it is you walk across that stage and you get that diploma, and that's taken. Last year was taken from them and it's taken away again. And that is, like you said, the prom and all the things. So that can add to that depressed feeling. But I'm also seeing anxiety and worry because as we've been in the pandemic, and I'm seeing this more with kids that are virtual, because it's like, will I ever really get out of the house? And it's a real feeling though, it's like, if I can't go to school, if I can't do this, it's been a whole nother school year. And for them, it seemed like it was all of last year, even though it didn't start until spring break. But because, we've been in it so long, I've had one kid say, all last year. No, baby, think about it. It didn't start. Well, it feels like all of last year. And I get it. It really does. And now it has been another year. So there's this anxiousness about when will life be in a normal state? Are you seeing any of that with the kids you work with, virtually or in person?
Of course. Of course. Everybody's asking when will it be normal? Miss Cooper, are we going to get to go to the science lab? Miss Cooper, are we going to get to do this? Are we going to take a field trip this year? Are we gonna? Can we mix and mingle at recess? In past, all of the sixth graders could. It didn't matter whose homeroom we were in; they could all play together. Now we've broken up all of the land around the school into zones, and you have to stay with your homeroom. You can't mix and mingle. and have that free time to collaborate with other students in other homerooms. And so that's definitely a question. And, you know, and I always, in my mind, I'm saying, what does normal even mean anymore? Because normal looks different to a lot of different people. And so a lot of times I'll just ask the kids, well, describe to me what you think normal is, or what do you
Mhm.
think normal was? Because some situations that kids thought was normal weren't very normal at all.
Right. Your norm may not be my norm.
Absolutely.
And whatever the norm was, it won't be the same. We're not going back. And one of the things I always say from the emotional point of view, our psyche is changed because of COVID. Not just COVID. If you look at 2020, 2020 was probably been the most stressful year that anyone can imagine in terms of you looked at the Black Lives Matter movement and why it had to exist
Mhm.
and the whole underlying issues of racism in America. You look at the election, this election cycle, and I don't even care what side you were on, it was a crazy time. And we're still feeling, the repercussions of that. So 2020 was a life-changing year. Talk about 2020 vision. It pulled the veil off of so many things and it was life-changing. It was not life-affirming, but it was life-changing. And because of that, we are changed. We're no longer going to be the person we were in 2019. When America is opened up and there are not the restrictions and there are not masks, whenever that may be,
Mm.
we are going to be changed. Think of, I'll just throw this out, think of a young child, maybe 1 year old. In their house, they know what a full face looks like. When they go out, all they know is this. Their,
Mm.
their psyche is to think that only faces are in their house.
Hmm.
So as
Hadn't
they
even
get
thought
older,
about that.
it,
Mhm.
I have that mind that goes there. And I'm just thinking, wow, just the things you look at the impacts. So if you're 2 years old, all you know is this, even because you were 6 months when that happened. So when you go out, if you get out to the store with mommy, daddy, you see this. People don't have faces. So these are some of the reasons I'd say for those obscure things like that, we won't be the same. So you imagine, let's say 2022, we are mask free. And now I am now 3 years old and I've only seen the face this way. How weird will that be? People on TV have faces, but people in real life don't. And
Mm.
so just these kind of things that impact our lives. Um, Nikki, you mentioned in looking at some of the other just unusual things that have happened, you were talking before when we talked about the pregnancy rate. Share what's going on with that and you found in your school.
Well, last year we only had 3 pregnant females, 3 pregnant students. And so at this point, the year's not even over. We have discovered that we have 20. And so what has happened is that there's so much unstructured time that kids are left alone, kids are left unsupervised. And so it may be them socializing with peers, or it also, there's a concern that it may be mom's boyfriend, or it may be the neighbor coming to the house. And so just the unstructuredness of it has given into an increase. We're looking at an increase in pregnancies. And I mean, when you think about unstructured supervised time, anything that happened previously, just
Mm-hmm.
make it exponential, to the next level. And it's just kids are exposed and they have access to things. When they were in school, they would go to school from 8 to 4, and then their parents, and when they made it home, by the time they made it home on the bus, there would be someone at home. But just imagine, from 8 to 5, there's no adult in the house, no supervision. So can you imagine the number of accidents that are occurring because kids are left alone, trying to cook, trying to clean? Can you imagine? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that can happen and has happened because of COVID.
And we, often I'm going to ask you about supervision and immediate connection with the younger children. One of the things we, it's like, oh, well, they're in high school, they can handle it. And you're right. We haven't trained, I'm all the things that were tempting, I can do. And if I was tempted to do something, I can do it now. I can get high at home because nobody's home. I can have so and so over, and you know what? We can high school. We can both check into our individual classes, check in, and still do what we have to do. And the other person can leave before anybody comes home. My attendance can be in place. I'll still do my work, but I'm gonna do what I'm going to do too, because it's unstructured, unsupervised time, and parents aren't thinking about this, so parents aren't having these conversations either. Parents aren't checking in. So parents, if you're out there with older children, you might need to pop in the middle of the day, unexpected. If you have a child you think is home alone, and sometimes if they're younger siblings, the younger siblings might not be able to keep it all in, although they can be bribed. But parents, you might need to, and I know it's hard, but man, you work with your employer, take a long lunch, do something, take uncompensated time, and just go check, because we don't know. And like Nikki said, even just the accidents, whatever they're cooking, and they're cooking and playing a game at the same time. And you forget something's on. So it's not just that you're trying to, it's not a gotcha. It's, I want you to be safe. Kanetra, what do you think are some of the downfalls or pitfalls? You mentioned depression, just being home alone and being a child. What are any other negative consequences might a younger child face? Because by sixth grade, they're gonna leave home. You're old enough to stay home. Right. By yourself. That's a lot.
I would like to segue into to kind of piggyback on the supervision part. So one of the things that we've noticed is that some parents never gave their kids technology. They never gave them a computer. They didn't have access to, the internet, because that was the way the parent was able to have some type of control over having access to the internet and all those different things. Well, now your child must have a device in order to get their education. And now they are with that device when no one is there. And especially for those kids who never had a device, just imagine the world of exploration that opens up, and how kids become intrigued with adventuring to the internet. We recently had a situation where we're currently dealing with a way to try and help students understand digital citizenship, and getting parents to understand that it's teaching our kids how to make good choices. Unfortunately, we can block some things, but we can't block everything. So a student I can put a video in my course and say, hey, you need to watch this educational video. And the way that I embed that video, it stops. But you can on it and it will take you to YouTube, and then they could watch music videos, or they could watch roadblocks, or they could play games, or they could look at different things. And although in the household, you may be able to set up some parameters where they can't get to certain sites, but it doesn't prevent them from using the internet to get off task. And so, especially with there not being somebody there watching them, make sure you're still in your course, make sure you're doing your work. Students can end up spending a great amount of time off task, therefore furthering the issue and further getting behind in their lesson, because that their supervision is not there. And mom never would have given me a computer, but now I have one, and look at all the things. Now I can play virtual games with my friends. And, even though I don't already, they can't come over here. So, oh my gosh, we can get on and, log into some type of virtual connection, and we can play games. And that's more exciting, of course, than reading my book or doing my assignment. And so that kind of goes into that unsupervised piece. There's a lot of responsibility. That's temptation to a kid. And how do we teach them? It's going to be there, but you have to make the right decision and stay on task. You have to know that when you finish your work, then maybe you can do some of those other things. And so the same conversations we have in the classroom with students should be kind of the same conversations going on at home with parents, and getting kids to realize it is not for you to have fun. You need to make sure you have this technology for a set purpose. And so that kind of plays that role of the unsupervised now with the technology. And we know there's so much out there when it comes to the technology piece.
Yes, and that's another conversation parents need to have. If you're listening, take this moment to share. Share this on Facebook since you're there now. There may be parents who are on your page who need to know. These are things parents may not think about. That supervision at any age from K through 12, there's a certain amount of supervision, different reasons, but supervision needs to be there. We talked about the older children home taking care of the younger children, and they might all really want to be on task, but it's a daunting task to have to be on task all day when nobody else is there. There is temptation. So this is time to teach that, to a child. But that's a hard thing. That's a hard lesson to learn. There are adults who find it difficult to not be on Facebook, not be on Twitter or TikTok during the day. I just took a little Facebook break and I was there for an hour. I'm like, it's for me, I'm just not like that, but I get it. There are people who you want a distraction. I needed a break and it was raining outside and yucky. I couldn't even go take a walk. So I thought I would take a break and I was on TikTok. This was a real, conversation. And I was on TikTok for an hour before I knew it, really. And this is an adult. So you can imagine being a child, an adult, this is tied to your paycheck. Yet you still got caught up in the moment of, I needed a distraction. So imagine being a sixth grader or even a 12th grader, and you have to manage those distractions. It's a hard thing to do. Therefore, it's another conversation that parents need to have. Parents need to be able to say, hey, this is what we do. And here and mold that free time. I've worked with some parents where they're home, there's a parent home with a child, and we've carved out a little time in the day where they can go do that. And it's set to a timer, and then you bring me back the controller. So for lunch, they can do something so they feel like they have something. And even though it's a short amount of time, it works. But parents really have to have those conversations. We were talking before, and there are things like fine motor skills that might be impacted. Tell us about that.
That was my next one. So one of the things that we as teachers, we typically like to use manipulatives, and we like for students to use different ways to manipulate things. And so, I remember when I taught third grade, we would give them the base 10 blocks, so we give them cubes to make groups and to figure out division. And then there's just cutting and pasting, making foldables. I love making a foldable. Okay. I will have a student make a foldable in a minute. I'll come up. I actually was like researching what are some different kind of foldables that turn. And now in a virtual setting, I have to be mindful. There's always, even when we were in person and everybody was in person, there was always those few kids who just never were able to bring school supplies. And so now those students are at home, and it is a big push in my district that the learning looks the same, whether the student is at home or in person. That's a tough task for a teacher to have to bear. I need to make sure that my students who are in the virtual environment feel like they're a part of the class. And that's hard to do. So when we're doing certain things like, I want them to make a foldable, or I want them to do this cut and sort activity, I have to be considerate of, what if that kid doesn't have glue? What if they don't have a pair of scissors? What if they really don't? Some of them, they don't even have a pencil. And so that's something that's a struggle. But then if I take that completely away, then my kids lose that fine motor skills on how to cut on a line, how to paste and not put a glob of glue on a piece of paper that's this big. And so, just coloring and shading. And so that is definitely something that's lost. So I have to be creative. Okay, if you don't have scissors, let me show you. You can fold your paper, crease it, and kind of rip it. And so you'll make your foldable like this. So the students still have that same idea that they're still using their hands, they're still drawing, and they're still doing those things, but it just looks different So I get very, very just, I'm very compassionate about those kids because my daughter was virtual the entire first semester. So I really kept that in mind. When I would see certain things going on inside the classroom that did not happen on the Zoom, you know, like my daughter missed out, like that's not fair. So, but definitely to your question, fine motor skills, just the movement of the hands. I mean, yes, even I did a lot of collaboration in my classroom. We broke out in groups. When we would talk, I teach world geography, and I actually have money from all over the world when I traveled. And so when we talked about the economic piece of different countries, I would bring that money and they would examine it, they would look at it, they would feel the money, they would compare it. I lost that. It's me now putting it up in front of the, you know, the screen. It's not the same as the kids like, oh my God, Miss Cooper, this feels like this. And oh, this one feels like this. So all of that hands-on, whenever we can bring the tangible piece in, just really was kind of toned back, or we had to become creative. And we as teachers didn't have a whole lot of time to figure these things out. Remember last year, we went virtual at the end of the semester. So now I'm virtual in the beginning of the first semester. So now I'm trying to see, okay, based on my curriculum, what are the alternative things that I can do? And so we have to be quick on our feet to come up with those.
Yeah, Nikki, are there any things in high school, and then I'm going to get to some questions that we have. Is there anything you think they're missing in high school, such as, we see how she's stating what's going on with the fine motor and just that hands-on. What are some things that may be lacking or being negatively affected with older students?
One of the things is the ability to communicate. We had already had the writing was being written like text style, all of these short words, short phrases, abbreviated words. So we already had that problem, but then just actually communicating, holding full conversations. You don't have anybody to talk to, and so your social skills are diminishing. Can you use your inside voice? Can you use your outside voice? They just don't have the ability to regulate that because there's no one around them, and just navigating the social skills in, like, when you're in Zoom. And I was telling you earlier, when I'm in Zoom, I have to cut everybody's picture off because it's very distracting. It makes me really, really dizzy. And so can you imagine looking at Zoom of a class of 30 people and thinking that everybody is looking at you? Can you just imagine that as a teenager? Oh, I got this big old zit. Oh, just those type of things are magnified, as opposed to when they were at school, they could tuck and hide. And now Zoom exposes you to all of these different flaws. And so kids are, they see their imperfections more, and they're more insecure. And so they don't have that ability when you're with people and talking to people, to feel comfortable in your own skin. They're not getting that ability to feel comfortable in their own skin.
That is true. I want to get to a question we have, and then we'll end the app two. One of them dealing with the star, and we'll come to that at the end just so parents will know. But this one, I'm home with my grandson and he's responsible, but lately he's been falling behind in homework. I had to take the laptop from him. He's been on Minecraft and other games and on another browser. I just happened to see it yesterday. I won't tell him, but I understand because teachers have the kids working a lot on their own while they talk to different kids throughout the day. It's hard on everyone. Really, just more of a comment. And this is a 10-year-old in fourth grade, so it is hard. Any words of encouragement or tips or something, because she says, I get it. He's there all day. Like we were saying with the adults, the client who said, and I was on TikTok for an hour. We talked about it. Any tips of how parents or grandparents can talk to the kids about that?
Well, and I'm going to try to make sure that I make it brief. But one of the things I think we as, I don't know, a state, a country did was to set the pre-notion that because we were going through a pandemic, everybody should have scaled down the expectations. And so this is my tip and my recommendation, and as it relates to anything, is that we should have taken that opportunity to teach kids how to persevere even through time of difficulties. We should have taught kids that even though we're in a pandemic and things are going haywire, you still remain focused because that's the reality of life. And so my suggestion or my recommendation to any parent out there is that you need to have conversations with your kid and make sure that your child understands your expectations, because regardless, it all starts at home. So if a parent is setting those expectations, like I knew what my mom and dad expected of me, whether I was in their presence or not. So I definitely feel that parents need to have those conversations. It's time out for pointing the finger. The teacher didn't do this, or the school should have, the district should have blocked this and that. What are you doing as a parent? And I have to say the same with myself and with my kids. So that would be my recommendation, is to go back and have those conversations that, you know what, I know that this is hard. I know that we're going through a crazy time, but you are still going to be held accountable for the things that you're supposed to do. And if you need help, advocate for yourself and ask. There's a village of people to help you.
Because our time is running short, Nikki, I'm going to ask you this as a counselor. What are the expectations this year about STAR? What's going on with that?
Well, the state of Texas has determined that the kids will take the STAR test and that they will take the STAR test in person. So that is the expectation. So business as usual, basically.
So the kids who have been virtual all year will go in?
Yes.
So will they be staggering this? So if everybody comes in, there won't be social distancing? Or is that you're still working out those norms, or what?
That would be up to the school how they set that out. We took at the high school level, we took the makeup STAR test in December, and so we were able to, with like just 39 kids on campus, of course, we had plenty of room. We were able to put 8 kids in a classroom, and we utilized all of the teachers, and those kids who were still at home and didn't have to come in, they were given asynchronous work. That was what we did. Now, what's going to happen in the spring coming up, we don't know yet. We don't know. We are in the process of putting classrooms together and different things as far as that's concerned. But I personally don't see a lot of kids coming in. And I personally
so what will
see
happen?
Well, what will probably happen, and I mean, this is just speculation, is that they will probably go ahead and do a waiver. Probably. So at the end, like all the kids who took the test, they'll get their results. You know, it might end up being something along that line like they did last year, because I don't think a lot of kids are going to come in, period. I really don't.
Well, if everybody comes in, I would have a concern about social distancing.
Well, exactly. One of the things that I do know that if they're taking it virtual, the school has like a month to administer all those tests. So they can strategically schedule different kids, because you have small group testing. So if they do them virtual, they have a wider length of time to actually get them all tested. But yes, they won't hold, the scores won't count against the schools this year.
Well, I personally have been against the test anyway. I don't see where it has helped education. It takes away the freedom to be able to teach, having been an educator. So, well, ladies, we have really almost overdone our time. I know last time you came, usually when you come, we have to make it a 2-parter. I don't know what your schedule's like. We'll look at that. But one of the things we wanted to talk about was, what are some takeaways and things we can do different? There are lessons we can learn. Education in America has not changed since the one-room schoolhouse of the 1800s. We have the same expectations and want to do the same things in a whole new world. So we may come back and talk about it from education. What are some things we need to do differently? As we wind down, first I want to thank my guests, Ms. Cooper and Ms. Williams, for joining me this evening. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your sharing your time and expertise. And before I give you your challenge for the week, I want to say something about Black History Month. I meant to do in the beginning. This is February. It is Black History Month. And some people jokingly say, why is it in February? It's the shortest month of the year. And some people say it jokingly, and some people really feel that way. So I wanted to give you a 1 minute Black history lesson. The impetus for Black History Month actually began in 1915 when Carter G. Woodson was with a group of alumni from the University of Chicago, and they were celebrating the achievements of African Americans, Black Negroes back then. And they know he put out a charge. We've got to do more to celebrate the lives and the accomplishments we've made in this country. February was chosen not just because it was Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's birth month, the 12th and the 14th of February, but because people already celebrated. There, people celebrated, African Americans celebrated Abraham Lincoln's birthday. They celebrated Frederick Douglass. So it was taking something who you already had momentum. So it was chosen, and then that week that encompasses their birthday came to be Negro History Week. Initially, people got on board, but it became, you know how even today we get to do stuff and then it becomes sensationalized and you lose what it was really about. And so people, even then in the 20s, found it as a money-making thing. And he made a very big effort. Do not invite anyone to your schools or to speak to your organization who knows less about the history than you do. Research your people, which is something that was a comment he made, and that's something that we have to do today. But it actually, the first Negro History Week was in 1926. So then it became Negro History Month decades later, under, oh my gosh, I just forgot the president, who it was, but it was it Ford? Where it became Negro History Week, Black History Month. And so we will, have little tidbits, but, we should celebrate our history every 365 Black. Mm-hmm. So I have decided that each week, not only will I do a call to action, I'll do 30 seconds about somebody you don't know about. So we're going to learn in that area as well. So your call to action is continue to take your mental health seriously. If you have a child in school, know a child in school, check in on them. Supervision is key. Share this with parents who may or may not know some of this information. Be kind to yourself. Be kind if you're a parent. Don't beat yourself up if you heard things tonight that were, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. How did I miss this? I'm not super. Be kind to yourself. Remain, and this is what you're going to hear a lot, remain politically aware. Why am I saying that? We came through a bizarre election cycle, but all politics is local. Yes, you change presidents, that's good. I'm really glad, but that's not all. So we have to continue to be vigilant about knowing what's going on in our own areas politically, our state, our local. No, be aware. And last, mask up. Wearing is caring. And as I like to say, mental health is health, and everything affects our mental health. So enjoy yourself, be nice to yourself, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining. Bye. Thank you, ladies, once again.
Thank you.